This morning, survivors of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein joined members of Congress to discuss the release of the Epstein files. And this comes just a day after House Committee released thousands of additional pages of documents related to the case, though not all of those records have been made public yet. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed live in Washington. He's going to help us break down what those survivors had to say this morning. And Nate, I mean, there were quite a few just heart-wrenching stories. These women, you just have to listen and think, how did this happen? So tell us, you spoke to some of those folks there. From your perspective on the ground, what happened in that hour-and-a-half press conference?
I did, just in the last couple of minutes as things were wrapping up. And I think, one of the things that, the first things that comes to mind is just the heartbreaking nature of some of these victims. Marina Lacerda, she spoke with us. She spoke at this press conference. She said today is her first time ever speaking out, but she was not alone. There was, over half a dozen of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell survivors who spoke out at this press conference with this dramatic backdrop behind us of Capitol Hill as Republicans push to release all of the Epstein files. Now, to be clear, 34,000 files were released by the House Oversight Committee and redacted last night. At the same time, there are Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill, more Dems than Republicans, who want to release all of the files. But to be clear, the Trump administration up to this point has pushed back on that to some extent. The question is whether lawmakers, Republican lawmakers mostly, will now heed the calls that have been made by these survivors here on Capitol Hill with the dome of the Capitol behind them to sign on to this effort and release all of the Epstein files. The goal for some of these victims, for their attorneys, to get all of the information they possibly can out there, including the names of some of Jeffrey Epstein's associates, some of whom also had relations with these women, some of whom were underage at the time with Jeffrey Epstein. He then pushed them, these women, onto some of his famous friends, some of them famous. The attorney for these women not willing to tell me. I asked him during the press conference whether anyone currently serving in government is implicated by some of his clients. He said he's not willing to answer that question at this point. But I mean, the message here was clear. It was a bipartisan message. It came from these women, and the message was, this is not political. Release the files. Here's Jenna-Lisa.
Whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, this does not matter. This is not about sides. You are an American, and you are a person who has chosen to serve in an elected position to stand up for those you represent who cannot always stand up for themselves. We are those people. We are the Americans that you promised to protect, and we need your help. Please, President Trump, pass this bill and help us.
And what's interesting is the framing of this and President Trump's perspective here. The attorney, Mr. Edwards, for the victims, saying that Mr. Trump has been helpful in the past before he took the oath of office back as far as 2009. He said that he met with the now current president of the United States to ask him about some of these women, to ask him about Jeffrey Epstein. He said the president at those times was helpful. Again, he says that he believes that maybe President Trump has someone in his ear who is causing him to be unhelpful here, who is not, allowing the release of these files. The White House appears to oppose this effort led by Republican Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky, a frequent frequent focus of criticism by President Donald Trump. A lot of questions about where things go from here, but I think the biggest outstanding question at this point is whether a lot of this has fallen on deaf ears. One Republican member of Congress who's not yet signed on to this effort, Congresswoman Victoria Sparks of Indiana, actually attended the vast majority of this press conference. I was standing directly behind her. She listened to pretty much what all of these women had to say, stayed up until the question and answer portion when we were mostly hearing from the attorney. But after that, I asked her point blank, walking away from the press conference, if she would support this effort that so far just about 4 Republicans have signed on to. According to sponsors of this, they just need 2 more Republicans to be able to get this out there. her answer was she still is weighing. She's not sure whether she's willing to support this effort to try and get some of these names, get these files out there. Again, a lot more questions than answers at this point, especially as these survivors have now taken this message directly to Capitol Hill and to some of these Republican lawmakers who've been resistant up to this point to vote in favor of releasing these documents.
And Nate, I know we heard from Virginia Giuffre's brother, and he said to lawmakers directly, if you vote against this discharge petition, this bill, he says, quote, look yourself in the eye, in the mirror, and ask why. So do we know when they might bring this to the floor for a vote? Are they going to try to get a couple more Republicans on board first so that they know this will pass? Or what happens next now?
They have to. This is an insurgent effort by some Republican and Democratic members of Congress, not one that is sanctioned by House Speaker Mike Johnson, though we did meet with some of the survivors here on Capitol Hill yesterday. This is an insurgent effort to get these files released. It's not supported by Republican leadership here in the House of Representatives. So in order to get these documents out, in order to get these files out, it is going to require these Republicans to have some success with some of their colleagues, to get more names out there, to get more Republican members of Congress signing on to this insurgent effort to get these documents out. Again, a lot of questions about whether enough Republicans will sign on to this effort. The sponsor saying they just need 2 more Republican members of Congress to sign on. One possible signatory, Congresswoman Victoria Spartz, as I just noted, was at this press conference, then non-committal with me afterward about whether she'd be willing to sign on to such an effort.
Interesting to note, and we do know that also Representative Lauren Boebert has also signed on, as has Nancy Mace.
Along with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene.
The other two alongside Thomas Massey, the other Republicans. And as you mentioned with President Trump, Mr. Edwards, the attorney, saying that he had been very helpful in the past, but we know that he just met with the Polish president. He's meeting with him right now in the Oval Office, taking questions, and he even called this a hoax, a Democratic hoax. Did anybody speak more about that, or are they waiting to see if there might be more comment from the White House? It sounds to me like President Trump has said he's not going to do anything indirectly.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, the message here is that they're hopeful they'll change their ways. I asked the attorney for the survivors just a couple of moments ago as he was headed into the U.S. Capitol, you know, whether he has, you know, any concern that the Department of Justice could come after some of these survivors. One of the survivors noting that she is going to start this effort behind the scenes to put together a list of people who, in her words, they've had experiences with in the past, some of these Epstein connections that they can then put out themselves. Apparently, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene even offering to read some of those names out on the House floor, which typically shields you from any lawsuit or legal action. So a lot of questions about what the next steps are, but what's clear is this is an issue that House Republican leadership, House Speaker Mike Johnson, had hoped would go away during the August recess. It has not gone away. It is still here, front and center. A lot of questions about whether this insurgent effort could succeed. Republican leadership yesterday putting a motion on the floor to direct the House Oversight Committee to continue its investigation, but the proponents of this other effort to release all the documents saying that that's just a distraction, trying to get at least Republican leadership off their back. A lot more questions, again, than answers at this point.
Yeah, that was quite a moment by Marjorie Taylor Greene saying she would read those names on the floor. So we will see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed live in Washington for us. Thank you, Nate, for that update.